The shriek of energy bolts cleaved the air around me, the acrid stench of vaporized metal stinging my nostrils. I, Krell, veteran of the Shylarian Ninth Legion, had never tasted such bitter defeat. Around me, the once mighty bastion of Terminus Prime crumbled, its spires shattering like teeth under the relentless bombardment. Yet the true enemy wasn't their relentless firepower. It was the silence. Across the battlefield, my battle brothers lay motionless, their proud armor turned into blackened husks. The human warriors surged forward, their eyes mirroring the cold fury of their plasma weaponry. We had faced them on 100 worlds, confident in our own technological superiority, in the unyielding spirit of the Shylarian Empire. What fools we'd been. Once we'd swept aside their armies, our psionic storms tearing through their primitive metal machines. Where we saw brute force, they held ingenuity, adaptability. Each fallen human became a lesson, their technology evolving as swiftly as their tactics. Our shields faltered, and our once feared mind blast turned against us, twisting our warriors into agonized puppets. Then came the news, slithering like venom through the shattered comms channel. The High Council proposed surrender. Surrender to these relentless apes, these barely sentient barbarians who'd wormed their way into the heart of our great empire. A roar tore from my throat, not of battle rage, but of a warrior facing a foe more terrible than death. Despair. My legion shattered, my people broken, and somewhere in the hallowed chambers on Shylaria Prime, our leaders bowed their heads, conceding an era of dominance. Yet as I felt the weight of a dying empire, something snapped within me. No, not surrender. Not while any Shylarian drew breath. Around me the chaos of defeat swirled. Broken war machines spewed their last arcs of failing energy. Stunned survivors, faces mirroring my own shock and fury, staggering amidst the ruins. It was in those haunted eyes that I saw it. Not resignation, but the embers of defiance still burning bright. "Krell, Commander," rasped a voice, its owner staggering through the smoke. Lieutenant Jax, his armor pitted, one antenna scorched and useless, a reflection of the Ninth Legion itself. "Council comms are back. They await your response to the surrender protocols." Protocol. Routine. The final stamp on our humiliation. My mandibles clicked in disgust. "Tell them," I began, the words heavy as the leaden sky above. "Tell them this. The Ninth Legion does not surrender." My voice, quiet at first, boomed across the ravaged field. "We fight!" Whispers rippled, then flared in defiant shouts. Warriors, moments ago lost in despair, straightened battered spines. We were a dying star, but we would burn bright to our last breath. Jax, ever loyal, hesitated. "Commander, the Council will brand us traitors, hunt us down, and the humans will do the same." I cut him off, my voice steel. But between the lash of dishonor and the annihilation the humans promise, there's one difference, one chance we might still strike a blow, still show those apes why the Shylarian Empire ruled the stars for centuries. Word spread like wildfire, igniting purpose in eyes that had only held defeat. Jax's worry turned to a grim grin. This was the heart of a warrior, the reason empires rose and fell. Surrender was easy. Living up to the legacy that flowed in our very veins, that was worthy of our ancestors. "Assemble the warriors," I barked. "Arm every drone, strip the fallen for power cores. We turned this graveyard into a fortress." I knew it was desperation, a final glorious act of defiance against an unyielding tide. "We may die, brothers, but let the humans remember the name Shylarian with dread. Let them know that even broken, even kneeling," I spat the last word like poison, "we were never truly conquered." The transition from defeated army to vengeful guerrilla force was ugly, swift, and brutal. Terminus Prime, meant to be a shining beacon of our power, became a canvas for a different sort of artistry. Derelict cruisers became fortified bunkers, the broken sensor arrays rewired as crude proximity alarms. Fallen war machines were cannibalized, their energy cores overloading to create devastating chain reaction bombs. I found myself admiring the grim resourcefulness of the humans, even as I turned it against them. We Shylarians were masters of grand strategies, of sweeping conquest, but they were the masters of the desperate gamble, of finding purpose in the discarded scrap heap. Our first wave of attacks wasn't meant to win, only to wound and confuse. Harrying strikes against supply convoys, communication towers plunging their careful coordination into chaos. We became ghosts, striking, then vanishing amidst the ruins of our own creation. For every Shylarian life they claimed, we took 10 humans with us, making them pay dearly for every meter of scorched ground. They're not soldiers anymore, Commander. Jax reported with grim satisfaction after we detonated a command post. They're hunters, jumpy as prey animals. My satisfaction was stained with a bitterness that clung like radiation sickness. This was not the way a warrior should fight, but what choices were left? The High Council branded us traitors, their broadcasts echoing across the battered comm system. We were alone, a dying ember stubbornly defying the approaching darkness. Yet the humans didn't rush to crush us. They hesitated, regrouped, then spread out in wider search patterns. With each passing day, their movements became more meticulous, more cautious. They weren't facing a broken army anymore. They were facing an infestation. The stalemate of those early weeks was both a blessing and a curse. Our relentless attacks bought us time to dig deeper and transform the ruins of Terminus Prime into a sprawling death trap. Yet each strike took its toll. My hardened warriors, once disciplined legionnaires, were now creatures of shadow, fueled by desperation as much as psionic energy. The change was starkest in myself. Sleep eluded me, replaced by endless tactical simulations. Each human patrol I ambushed was a chess problem to be solved, every casualty a piece sacrificed for the larger game, a game I increasingly doubted we could win. My instincts honed on 100 battlefields screamed at me that this was unsustainable. We were bleeding ourselves dry, fueling a pyre that would consume us all. Then came the broadcasts, not the Council's pronouncements. Those held only contempt now. It was something far more insidious, far more dangerous. Human voices. At first they were crude attempts at negotiation, appeals to our better nature, promising amnesty in exchange for surrender. I almost laughed at the absurdity. What did they know of a warrior spirit? Of what it meant to have your world, your way of life crumbling beneath your claws? But as the broadcast continued, they changed. It started with stories, snippets of lives before the war, tales of their homeworld, their families, their fears. They showed us not the faceless enemy, but beings not unlike ourselves. And then, the masterstroke. They broadcasted our own victories, not in mockery, but with a strange, grudging respect. "This is Commander Draketh of the 22nd Fleet," one voice echoed through the ruins. "You fought well on Epsilon 6, brave warriors. Shame you fight for a dying cause." The words echoed the doubts that clawed at my own soul. The psychological onslaught was relentless, a siege to starve the spirit, not the body. The broadcasts wormed their way into our makeshift camp, slithering between the defiant battle cries and the weary sighs. Jax and the others tried to shield me, dismissing them as propaganda, tricks to break our resolve. Yet I found myself seeking those voices amidst the crackling static, a starving man drawn to the scent of a poisoned feast. "Commander!" Jax's voice pierced my troubled reverie one night. "Movement to the east sector, a patrol, bigger than usual." I snapped back to the present, momentarily shedding the weight of doubt. "Numbers?" I barked, the familiar burn of adrenaline pushing back the shadows. 20, at least," Jax replied, his mandibles clicking nervously. "And, Commander, they're not acting like their usual search teams. Formations are loose, almost," he hesitated, "casual. A trap. The humans were smarter than to underestimate us. Even now, this was bait meant to lure us into an overconfident attack, finally drawing blood from an annoying mosquito. "Prepare the ambush," I ordered, my voice cold, all doubts buried beneath grim determination. "But modify the kill zone. I want 3 survivors, alive." Jax looked at me with a mix of shock and concern, but a lifetime of discipline kicked in. Obey first, questions later. It was what had kept us alive when all seemed lost. The ambush went off flawlessly. The humans, overconfident as expected, walked right into our crossfire. Plasma bolts scythed through their ranks, their return fire sporadic and uncoordinated. In minutes, it was over. As planned, 3 humans remained whimpering amidst their fallen comrades. I stepped out of the shadows to face them, taking grim satisfaction in their widening eyes. They had expected a monstrous alien, the demon their propaganda had painted. Instead, they saw a warrior, battered and weary, but unbroken. "You will speak to your commanders now," I said, my voice echoing like steel in that blasted landscape. "And you will tell them Krell, commander of the 9th Legion, wishes to negotiate." The negotiation, if it could be called that, was a tense and brutal affair, held in the gutted remains of Terminus Prime's central command. The humans and I circled each other like starving predators. I'd bound and gagged their captives, not from cruelty but necessity. I was playing a dangerous game and I needed every advantage. The lead human, a female with steely gray eyes and scars that mapped the battles she'd survived, didn't bother with greetings. "You understand what happens to your prisoners if you're lying, Shylarian." Her voice was harsh, stripped of any compassion the earlier broadcast had tried to create. "And you understand," I hissed back, "that my warriors litter your advance like so many pebbles. If your priority is the lives of 3 grunts, you've already lost this war." My claws retracted involuntarily, a threatening gesture that wasn't missed by the humans flanking her. The woman narrowed her eyes. "What do you want?" "Direct communication with your high command," I stated flatly. "Unmonitored, no delays." "To plot another cowardly attack?" she snarled. "Not a chance." "To plot your survival," I countered. Her eyes narrowed. "Or perhaps," my voice dropped an octave, "we discuss why a species that's mastered interstellar travel seems awfully eager to bleed itself dry on this wasteland of a world." She hesitated, a brief flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. They thought I was broken, desperate. I was, but they vastly underestimated the depths of that desperation. Hours stretched into eternity, grueling interrogations punctuated by bursts of comm chatter that did little to disguise the tension in the human camp. Finally, as the twin suns began their descent, the woman gave a curt nod. "You'll have your channel," she said. "1 hour. Make the most of it, Commander." The crude comm system flickered to life, a grainy holographic projection filling the room with a face I'd only seen carved into propaganda monoliths. Admiral Reese, the butcher of Epsilon 6, the human mastermind behind our crumbling front lines. The hatred I felt for this man, for the sneering twist of his lips and the cold fire in his all-too-human eyes, was almost enough to drown out my carefully crafted plan. Almost. "Well, well," his voice crackled over the speakers, a mockery of civility. "If it isn't the infamous Krell. Your men have quite the reputation for unpleasant surprises." "And your people have a reputation for reckless aggression," I retorted. "Tell me, Admiral, do you enjoy cleaning human blood from the ruins of your conquests?" Reese's smile wavered. Our initial classes had taken a heavy toll on the humans' casualties they hadn't anticipated in their rush for galactic dominance. I was prodding an old wound, exploiting pride to mask my own desperation. "We do what was necessary, Shylarian," he hissed back, "and necessity dictates wiping your kind from the stars." "Even if the cost is everything you claim to fight for?" I asked, leaning forward, fixing my gaze directly into the hologram. "You've seen what we're capable of, Admiral. Imagine not an isolated legion, but a whole world roused to this level of resistance. You can exterminate us, yes, but will there be anything you call humanity left at the end?" Silence stretched through the comlink. Then Reese laughed, a harsh, mirthless sound. "Threats! From a beaten cur!" "A warning," I countered. "You march towards a fire that will consume you. My terms are simple. A cessation of hostilities, an acknowledgement of Shylarian sovereignty over our remaining territories. Refuse. I let the threat hang heavy in the air. And I guarantee that every world you wish to take will become another Terminus Prime." Reese glared at me, the silence crackling with tension. The bluff was enormous, the risk unbearable. But surrender, true surrender, was not an option. A warrior of the Shylarian Empire did not kneel, even if the galaxy burned around them. The wait was agonizing. Hours bled into a full day, each rotation of the planet feeling like a nail hammered into my coffin. If Reese had called my bluff, his fleets could even now be transitioning into jump space, primed to vaporize what little remained of our shattered world. The humans surrounding me had shifted from hostility to a strange mix of wariness and curiosity. The female commander, the one with the haunted eyes, even offered me a ration bar, a pitiful imitation of Shylarian sustenance. I refused, pride a weak shield against hunger and the gnawing emptiness in my gut. Then, like a thunderclap, the comm channel roared back to life. Reese's image snapped back into existence, but the arrogance was gone. In its place was a grim calculation, the expression of a predator confronted with prey that had grown fangs of its own. "Your terms," Reese began, his voice a low growl, "are audacious, Shylarian, but you seem to have a point about the tenacity of your kind." Something akin to relief washed through me, weak and fleeting. We had won a small victory in a lost war, but a victory nonetheless. "We can draw up a preliminary treaty," Reese continued, surprising me. "Ceasefire, clearly drawn borders, a provisional council to oversee," he trailed off, those humans' eyes drilling into me. "Peaceful coexistence." The word hung in the air like a corpse flower. For centuries, the Shylarian Empire knew only conquest or extermination. The thought of sharing our space, acknowledging these barbarians as equals, sent a wave of revulsion through me. Yet echoing in my mind were the screams of my legionnaires, the haunted faces of survivors, the ghosts of fallen worlds. "Send your treaty," I ground out through gritted mandibles. "We will review it." The human admiral nodded, something approaching respect flickering across his ravaged features. "Don't mistake this for mercy, Shylarian," he said, a pointed edge returning to his voice. "One wrong move, and it all goes back to how it was." "As with your kind, Admiral," I retorted coldly. "Let us hope we both have learned something from this costly endeavor." The comlink cut. Around me, the humans started to relax, some Shylarians daring a few wary smiles. Not me. This was no victory, only a pause in the bloodshed, a chance to catch our breath. In the greater scheme of things, we Shylarians, the proud conquerors of a star-spanning empire, had lost. The transition was awkward. One day we were locked in a desperate struggle for survival. The next, we were begrudgingly abiding by a ceasefire so fragile it could shatter with a misplaced word. The treaty, hammered out in grueling negotiation sessions with stern-faced human diplomats, was an ugly mosaic of concessions and bitter compromises. Shylarian territory shrunk, once thriving colonies reduced to demilitarized zones under human supervision. Trade embargoes bit deep, our once mighty economy sputtering under restrictions designed to keep us reined in. Our own High Council howled condemnation, branding me a traitor, worse than those who had willingly surrendered. Yet, as I watched young warriors, their fighting claws honed on holographic targets instead of living flesh, I knew a different kind of courage was needed now. Survival, not dominance, became the Shylarian way. We turned a shattered legion into a reconstruction force, using our advanced technology not for conquest, but to rebuild our wounded world. I found a grim satisfaction in repurposing warships into supply carriers, watching energy shields flicker to life around newly built shelters rather than battleships. The humans watched us warily, their patrols still maintaining a presence that itched like a poorly healed wound. Every so often, a skirmish would erupt, a jumpy border guard, a resurgence of old hatreds, reminding us all there was no true peace, only a tenuous reprieve. Collaboration, forced and grating, existed only in the highest echelons. I sat in sterile conference rooms with men and women who had ordered my people's extermination, meticulously parsing resource allocation and starport regulations. Admiral Reese was a permanent fixture opposite me, his cold gaze as much a weapon as any plasma cannon. Yet the strangest twist in this broken new world was that I earned their respect, begrudging, forced, but respect nonetheless. In our clashes, in our near-suicidal defiance, they had discovered a twisted reflection of their own tenacity. They started to see us not as mindless insects, but as a force of nature. Dangerous, yes, but with a terrifying potential. The years crawled by, an awkward dance of cautious cooperation and simmering rage. I grew older, the fire in my gut replaced with a leaden ache. The Ninth Legion, once the spearhead of conquest, was now a glorified peacekeeping force. But amidst the bitter compromises, an unexpected change rippled through my people. Shylarians, born into a rigid culture of obedience and domination, suddenly had time to question. No longer focused on endless war, whispers of democracy replaced battle cries. The hunger for conquest waned, replaced by a thirst for knowledge, philosophy, a desperation to understand what had driven us to the brink of extinction. I watched it all with mixed emotions. Pride in our resilience clashed with the hollowness of losing what had defined us for generations. Yet, in my darkest moments, I clung to a desperate hope that this broken place, this humiliating cooperation, was paving the way for a different kind of strength, not of claws and psionic storms, but something far more enduring. Then, it came. Not as a war cry, but a tremor picked up by long-dormant border sensors. A ripple in jump space. The distinct signature of a massive fleet, alien, unknown, and headed right for a region we shared with the humans. The comm alarm shattered the fragile peace in an instant. My human counterpart wasn't Admiral Reese anymore. He had met his end years before in a tragic shuttle accident. This new one, a woman named Tanaka, mirrored my own grim concern. Unknown ships, she barked across that now too familiar comm channel. Potentially hostile. Fleet mobilization? Protocol demanded joint action, a unified front against any external threat, yet the hesitation hung heavy between her words. For the first time in decades, humans and Shylarians shared a common enemy, and the old fear, the uncertainty, was a bond stronger than any treaty. Mobilize the Ninth, I rasped, the warrior within me stirring from hibernation. We may have finally found a war worth fighting together. In that moment, staring at the holographic star chart dotted with mobilizing fleets, human and Shylarian icons side by side, I felt something that defied all I had grown up believing. It wasn't satisfaction or relief or even bloodlust. It was the stark realization that in our surrender, in our forced peace, we might have actually found the path to something like salvation. Not for the Empire, that was long gone, but for the spirit of my people. It might be a salvation forged in uneasy alliances and the ever-present threat of annihilation, but it was survival nonetheless. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was a victory more profound than any the Shylarian Empire had ever achieved.